What's up guys, Justin going live here, and in this video I want to talk about the 6 steps framework that helps you scale your gym or bootcamp from 10k a month up to 30, 40, 50k a month and beyond that. So this is based on a question I get quite a lot. I've got one question here from Instagram from Mike, who is a bootcamp instructor in the UK, and he says, Justin, love your work. I've done everything you've said. Taken a lot of advice from marketing and sales and offers, and I've driven my revenue and client base up to a solid 12k a month. However, the next challenge I'm facing is that I'm not sure where to take the business beyond this level. As it is, I'm already spending a lot more hours working on making content, doing sales calls, and also fulfilling the clients I've attracted, which is brilliant, don't get me wrong, but now I'm working so much in the business to maintain that revenue and grow it, I'm not sure how to work on the business and how to scale up beyond myself. Great question from Mike, and this is a situation a lot of Fit Pros get into. It's kind of like the second biggest challenge. The first challenge we have is how do we get a consistent lead flow? And when you have that problem solved, then it's time to look at the next challenge Fit Pros realize is how do you scale the business after that, and how do you keep that momentum going, but without kind of sacrificing your time and energy and your family life in the process. And that's pretty much what we mentor Fit Pros to do. If you're breaking that 5 to 10k a month mark, you've validated your service and you know you've got something good that people are coming for and they're staying for, then you've got to look at the next step of how to grow a real business out of this. And so there are 6 key assets, and what you need to do at this point is the biggest problem you're going to have at this point is lack of profitability. If you're like most Fit Pros, and we work with thousands of Fit Pros and we see the same issue over and over again, there's a lack of business structure and a lack of financial structure and a lack of systems that really stop you getting to that next level. So what we teach in our program is basically that getting to the next step is about understanding what are your 6 key assets and how do you make a bigger return on those assets. So this is a concept called ROA, Return on Assets. So assets are things that right now you're already paying for. You're putting money into these things, or you're putting the most amount of time and energy into these things. And if you're not yet growing the business, that's because you have not yet released enough company profit. What that means is that's enough. The business has to make enough money to cover all its costs, like rent and marketing and things like that. It needs to cover your payroll if you have any team members. And if it's just you, then you need to take a dedicated salary from the company. But the company also needs more money on top of that to make a company profit. What most Fit Pros are doing at that low 6-figure mark is they're basically keeping all the profits and they're treating their business like a job. So if the business makes 12k in a month and they had 9k in costs, then the Fit Pro basically takes the entire 3k of profit, they take it out and spend it as their own salary. So if you're doing that, then really your business has no profit. It's not profitable because profit has to come on top of what you pay yourself. And this is important just before we get into the 6 steps, because profit is the only way you're going to scale your business, because scaling your company is a cost. It costs money to grow a bigger location, to run more marketing, to pay more people. This costs money. You're going to pay bigger taxes, for example. And so if you are not putting company profit aside, then sure, you're getting paid and you're living a decent lifestyle, but how is the company ever going to grow to the next level? That's what we have to start doing. So the fact is you're putting money and energy into things and they're growing your business, but you need to release more profits. So you need to learn to make more revenue from what you're currently doing without spending more money and time. The problem Fit Pros get into is that they grow their revenue, but they don't grow their profits. And so they end up just doing more work, doing more things, juggling more plates, spinning more plates, I should say, juggling more balls. And the company grows to a ceiling, probably about 15, 20k a month, where they really can't do everything else on their own. Because at that point, one of two things is going to happen. Either the business is going to kill you, through stress, overwhelm, burnout, or you're going to end up killing the business because it's not sustainable. One of those things will happen first, neither is good. So you need to learn return on assets. So what are the 6 core assets, and what do we need to do to get them producing more profit for us so that we then have a surplus of cash that we can reinvest into systems, infrastructure, people to help you, and so on. So the first asset, and these are the 6 things that make the biggest difference to your business, and they're mostly being underutilized. You're not making enough money back off these things based on what you're currently doing. So the first asset is you. Of course, you are the primary asset of the company. Right now, you probably are the company. So what I would say is most entrepreneurs are not getting to that next level. Number one, because of lack of productivity. How are you really spending your time, energy, and money every day in the company? Is it the most productive it could be? Are you doing only the most productive tasks which grow the business rather than just working in the business? So you've got to carve out time, first of all, to work on the business as well as working in it. Okay, and only by doing this first step can you actually then make a return on the following 5 assets too, right? So that's number one, looking at your own productivity schedule, and are you really doing the best work you can to grow the company and squeeze out more profits? Most of you are not, and even though you're busy, you're not being productive. So the fact that you work 10 hours a day doing client sessions is great if you want to keep a job, but it's never going to help you grow a business, right? And it shouldn't be worn as a badge of honor, because you can do 10 sessions a day for the rest of your life. You're never going to go beyond 20K a month, right? So number one is you. The second asset you want to look at is your team, if you have a team in place. And if you only have one person, right? Maybe you just have an admin person. Are you maximizing their productivity? For the time or the hours you pay them, are you getting maximum return? This is the next place where fit pros fall down, because they're working with maybe 1 or 2 part-time people. Maybe they have a salesperson, or they have a coach, a part-time coach on board, or maybe they're hiring an ads manager or something. And the problem is most of the time you're paying out way too much for these people versus the return that they bring you. So how much should you pay someone? Well, it doesn't really matter how much you pay them. What it matters is how much ROI that asset, that person is bringing back to your company. I'm happy to pay a coach £10,000 a month, but they better be bringing $60,000 a month back into my business each month to justify that salary, if that makes sense. So most of you, though, are not doing that. You're taking people on, you're paying them whatever they ask per hour, per session, per retainer month, whatever it might be, but you haven't yet calculated the job role and how much ROI it needs to make back. Now, we have a general rule, and if you want to scale from 10K up and build a real business, one of the key metrics you have to start looking at is called revenue per employee or revenue per contractor. So we generally look for a 5 to 8x ROI on whatever we pay someone. So if I'm going to pay a coach £1,000 a month, he or she needs to be responsible for helping the company make 5, 6, 7, or £8,000 a month back. So I need to have enough clients to hand over to that person that person can handle 5 to 8K a month worth of client fulfillment in order to justify giving them that role. So a lot of fit pros have basically outsourced too early when they haven't got enough revenue to actually justify that, and they end up paying the coach more than they pay themselves, the CEO, or you haven't, or you've just got the wrong person, or it was the wrong hire for that stage in the business, and it was more work you probably should have learned to do yourself at that time. Hiring a Facebook ads manager is one of the silliest things fit pros do way too early. I wouldn't personally hire a Facebook ads manager because they usually charge £1,000 to £2,000 a month. I wouldn't hire an ads manager until I was making at least £10,000 a month. Because from the fit pros I work with, they're making 3K a month and they're paying their ads manager more than they pay themselves a salary. That's a big red flag. So you're probably paying out too much for your contractors or employees, and you haven't calculated or designed the job role so that it brings back more than what you're paying. So that's your team number two. The third asset is your audience or your list. Now you have two lists here. Primarily you have your prospect list and you have your client list. And you need to be looking at ways to maximize the value of both of those lists. So you can maximize your client list value through, keeping, this is where results and service come into it. So you've got to be giving great results. That's going to lead to better retention. So you increase the lifetime value of that client. You also want to be generating referrals, which improves the value, and also offering any upsells or cross-sells. So any complementary services you could offer, ideally that are delivered by somebody else, like if you can cross-sell yoga or meal prep or physio or something like that in your studio that you can take the money for, or the majority of the money, and you don't actually have to spend time or money delivering that service. You'll take only a cut of that revenue, obviously, as you'll have to pay the other business person to deliver the task, but that's basically like free money. So that's probably works out more profitable than creating new products and services yourself. So that's how you maximize client value. The other side of that coin in the audience asset is the prospect list. Now, how do you maximize the value of your prospect list? Well, you turn more of them into clients. And you also want to be figuring out ways to turn more of them into clients faster. So let's talk about that first of all, because this is a concept that is not discussed in fitness business circles, but it's something I've built my entire career on doing. And that's called sales velocity. So you want to write that down, sales velocity. Sales velocity means the speed in which your product flies off the shelf, essentially. Now, this mostly goes for product-based businesses or things like restaurants, where if a restaurant orders a stock full of steaks, for example, those steaks are only going to last 3 or 4 days. So if I order in 20 steaks for my restaurant, I better sell them that week, because if they go off, then that's dead money. I paid, that was cash on my shelf, and now I've lost it. But in service industries, we don't take this as seriously, but we should, because obviously the faster you grow, it's great to get 20 clients, right, in a year, but what if you could get 20 clients in a month? Then you get the cash flow faster, you're able to reinvest quicker, you're able to put more profit aside. So you want to look at shortening your sales cycle as much as you can. A lot of fit pros make the mistake of doing these huge front-end challenges, like 12-week challenges, 8-week challenges. And the problem with that, it attracts a lot of people, sure. But the problem is you don't make any real cash until 8 to 12 weeks later. Now, can your business really afford that turnaround time? Probably not, because you've got to make money in that time, and cash flow is the most important thing. So instead, see if you can shorten your sales cycle. If you could get the same number of clients from just a 14-day trial versus a 4-week trial, then that means you can get double the number of customers in a year than you regularly would, just by repeating the same system, because you have double the chance to do it. The other aspect of increasing your prospect value, like I said, is to turn a higher number of them into clients. So you really want to look at giving your audience multiple ways to communicate with you. Are you being accessible? Do they have a phone line they can call? Are you using SMS? Are you using WhatsApp? Are you using messenger bots? Do you have a free Facebook group? Are you creating DMs on Instagram? This is what we do in our business. We have multiple communication channels. We don't have one prospect on an email list, because with a 20% open rate, that means only 20% of our prospects are actually going to get our messages. And that's why not many of them would convert. But we put each prospect onto multiple channels. So a prospect of ours thinking about buying from us is getting our emails. They're in our free Facebook group. They're on WhatsApp. They're getting messenger bot messages. They're getting SMS blasts once a month. And so we have multiple ways of getting in front of that person, which heightens the chance of them becoming a customer. So that's your audience. That's the third asset, is your audience, your prospects and your clients. And you've got to maximize the value and how fast you make the cash flow of both of them. Okay, the fourth asset, this is your cash flow, right? So your cash flow is the amount of profit in the company after you've paid all expenses and taxes and payroll. It's basically the amount of profit you have left to either pay yourself something nice, or to reinvest back in growth. And that cash flow is king, or as my mentor Yassine says, cash flow is king, queen, god, and Sith Lord of your business. It's that important. Cash flow is actually the reason our gyms are thriving during this lockdown, because we saved 8 to 12 months of operating cash flow, which means if we lost all our revenue, if every single client stopped coming to our gym because of the lockdown, we could actually pay all our costs, pay all our full-time employees, and continue paying for marketing and everything else for at least 8 months before we ran out of cash. And so building up your amount of cash flow, or your operating cash, is the number one thing in business you have to do. Now, if you build up 3 to 6 months of operating cash flow, which means essentially 3 to 6 times your break-even point each month, then that will mitigate your company from risks and threats, such as being locked down for 3 months, or if your gym gets burned down, or you have a flood or a natural disaster, or whatever might happen, or you just can't work for 3 months. So 3 to 6 months of operating cash is good. So you take your break-even point, what it costs you to run your business and pay yourself each month, and then times that by minimum 3 to 6. That's the number of cash your business should have sitting in the bank at all times, right? If you don't have 3 months operating cash, your business is like on thin ice. It's a feather in the wind, it's vulnerable, it's weak, it can be destroyed at any moment. And the sad fact is that 90% of business owners, and by that extension, 90% of fit pros and gym owners, have less than 1 month of operating cash in the bank. That's why there's such a PT apocalypse going on right now, because when they can't make any money this period, then they're 1 month away from going bankrupt, right? Because they did not save, or the business did not save any cash. They took the money out, spent it on themselves, and bought fancy cars and watches and trips around the world they couldn't really afford, and their business was starving of oxygen. And then now, when there's a stranglehold on the business, it dies very fast, okay? So cash flow is that massive asset. 3 to 6 months minimum is what the number of cash you need in your business. If you're not at that level yet, then don't get complacent. You've got work to do. So so we've talked about yourself as the first asset, your team number 2, your audience number 3, your cash flow number 4. Number 5 is your network. So my good friend Ketan Makwana once taught me that your network is your net worth. So your network of other businesses, complementary services, media, or any person or organization that has access to a database of your ideal customers. Your network is super important because you'll be able to get in front of their customers, you'll be able to get new opportunities, you'll be able to leapfrog your business much quickly if you have the right connections. So you want to be making sure you're connecting with people every day in your community. Do you know the top politicians? Do you know the mayor? Do you know the local schools? Do you know the top business owners? Right? We make connections every single day with these top contacts, and we can go to them if we need anything or if we have anything of value to offer them. Okay, and we've got out of some sticky situations thanks to having certain friends in high places. So it is a lot to do with who you know as well, but you've got to build those connections. You're not just granted them, you have to go and work to get them and give value to those audiences first, so that if you ever do need something in return, you're able to kind of withdraw from that goodwill ATM, so to speak. Okay, so we've talked about yourself, your team. I'm reminding myself now, yourself, your team, your audience, your cash flow. Number 5 is your network. The 6th biggest asset that you're paying for right now and you're not maximizing is your facility itself, or wherever your rent, whatever you're using right now. So rent is going to be one of your biggest overheads, whether you rent out of a school or you use a boot camp in a park or you have a unit. Overheads are going to be your biggest, one of your biggest costs. And most of you could tell me no problem how much you pay per square meter of space that you rent, but not many fit pros can tell me how much they make per square meter. So we look at profitability per square foot. That's how you know if I'm making an investment of £2,000 a month for a unit, and that unit is, just for easy numbers, let's say it's 2,000 square feet, I know that I'm paying £1 per square foot every month. So I need to make a return of at least £1 back per month from each square foot. So there's two ways you can maximize the money you make from the investment in rent that you're paying right now. And those two ways are making more use of the time and the space dimensions of your unit. So time is a bit more simple to begin with. You can increase the money you make by adding more time slots. Could you add more times? One big thing I did back when I had a semi-private studio years ago is I was doing 1 hour sessions like everybody else with 4 clients at one time. And then what I did is I realized I could probably get the same results with those clients in just 45 minutes. So I cut my sessions down to 45 minutes, and then I was doing about 10 sessions a day pretty much. So if you think about that, if I shaved off 15 minutes per time slot and then had 45 minutes and then the next session start right after that, I saved 15 minutes times 10 in that day, right? 150 minutes shaved off. So I was able to do 3 to 4 additional sessions a day, from 10 to 13 sessions. That's 30% increase in how much money I could make in a day or a month without spending more money on rent. Okay, so that's an example of time. The other example is, could you use your space in some way or make money from it in the times you're not using it, in off-peak times or weekends, for example? So one thing we do is we've paired with a level 2 and 3 certification provider who every 6 weeks will come to the unit in Cardiff and they pay us to deliver their level 2 and 3 certification program to a bunch of people who they're certifying. So we charge them rent to use the space on the weekend at the times we're not using it, and they give us a commission on every head they have in the room. So we make close to £1,000 every 6 weeks just by another business partner coming in and using this, renting the space off us when we're not even using it. So that's 2 examples of time and how you can maximize time. And then you've got space. And so you can just simply look around your place. Sometimes even better programming can help you with this. I've worked with fit pros who were working with maybe 10 people in a group, and they honestly thought they couldn't squeeze any more people in. But from looking at how they designed their programs and how they laid out their equipment, they had equipment in the wrong places. And just by moving a couple of things around and being more creative with programming, they were actually unable to add 14 people in a group instead of 10. And again, that adds 40% more revenue to your company without taking up more time or paying for more space. So in this example, they had a squat rack put against the wall. So I said, well, if we just, which limited the number of people that could work in that area. But I said, if we just bring the squat rack out and then we devised a program where they had 4 people working around one squat rack, they were then able to add more people into the group and make more money per time slot. That allowed them to go from taking a maximum of 50 clients in their studio to taking like an extra 10 to 15 clients a month. That massively increased their monthly revenue potential, and it cost them nothing. The other thing is to look for dead space. Where do you have, if you have 2 or 3 square footage of dead space, like in the corner of your studio that isn't being used, how could you turn that into active space or monetized space? So I was just surveying our units last year and saw that we had about 3 to 4 square footage of space next to one of the walls, and nothing was happening with it. So I said, why don't we just put a vending machine here or a shelf with our products and sell some protein bars or a t-shirt rack? Anything like that. If you just put something that people can then look at and buy from, it becomes active space. Even a banner that promotes something is better than having nothing in that space. And it's these little things now, guys, like if you want to go from 10, 20K up to 50K plus, it's not about doing any big, major, different things. It's really just about looking at the little things now and looking at efficiencies. Where can you add value and revenue, and where can you make cost efficiencies on top of your biggest investments? And your biggest investments right now is yourself, your team, your marketing, where you build your list. It's your network you've been building, or the area you live in. It's, you know, and it's also your lease you're paying for. These are the biggest costs you have. So you want to make sure you're turning them into your biggest ROI investments. And when you do that, you're going to free up more profit, free up more cash flow, which is one of the most important assets. And then again, you're going to find it far easier to fund the resources to be able to scale the model that you know has worked and you've tested on a small scale. You're going to have the money to then grow, hire more people, and you're going to have the time to train them, to get them into the core values, to find the right people, find the right spaces. But money is going to help you do all that, and it comes from profits. It doesn't come from outside investors, doesn't come from winning the lottery, doesn't come from being born rich. It comes from you creating the profits by having an efficient business that makes return on assets. If you have any questions on this, guys, let me know. And if you want to expand on this, check out the link above. We'll talk about this more in my Facebook group. If you want to learn more advanced concepts like this to grow your fitness business, check it out, and I will hear from you guys very soon.